agree with Alan Greenspan? We ought to just eliminate the debt ceiling. Oh, absolutely. We do.
The ability of almost every working American to access more credit than they should have been able to masked the underlying fact that lower and middle class incomes were not rising.
That's not a tenable strategy. Isn't now the time to eliminate it? Oh, we've been a long time ago.
Let's put aside terrorism. Let's talk only about our own homegrown animals that are patrolling America right now. So it goes down to the simplest thing. Be prepared, be vigilant.
Another early morning. Another beautiful early morning. Is there anything better than getting up before the sun, walking the neighborhood, 2 pit bulls at side, panting, thinking about all it could be in a day, all the preparations that can be made, all the work that can get done, all the fun that can be had on a summer day? Is there anything better than an early morning? Some people hate the early morning. When I awoke this morning, I had politics on my mind. Not anything interesting, just a very deep contempt for the whole system. Right? We've got the new guy, Scaramucci, has done a interview with the New Yorker and really just running off at the mouth, degrading the political system even further. And it really, it's just, it looks like children at play to me. At first, I thought these heavy-handed moves by the president were something that were going to, make change and make us better. To me, it looks like schoolyard. Every day it looks more like schoolyard when we have preachers. We have preachers in California, imams, supposed imams, right? You have to call them supposed imams because the men who do what this man does is not on par with what a spiritual leader should be doing. But he's called for the murder of all Jews down to the last one. Automatic deportation, by the way. We talked about this. You get a sniff of radical behavior like this where you're promoting the death of anyone, automatic deportation. Goodbye. Back to your hellhole. You have fun over there in the scorching sun. You can talk about all you want. You can talk about all of the grudge that you have with the Jews. You can go to the border of Jerusalem and try to kill them all yourself. You'll be unsuccessful. You'll be obliterated in a matter of minutes. But we can't let people sit here and nominate generals for the war on America. We can't let the ranks be swollen. The radicals are still there, even though they've gone quiet. You have to understand. They've read Sun Tzu. They know that when the enemy is weak, you attack. And right now the enemy is strong, and they have to get their ranks up. It's a one-off thing now, right? You see a one attacker, two attacker. And it's been quiet over the last few months, right? So the Americans, they get silly, they get stupid, they start to worry about other things, like boxing matches. But the truth of the matter is, you must always remain vigilant. You must always remain vigilant. There's a story in Baltimore right now. And on the face of it, it looks like a decent idea. Minimum 1 year jail sentence, or is it 2 year? Minimum jail sentence, I think it's 2 years, for illegal possession of firearms. This is what the wording is, right? Illegal possession of firearms. And you hear that and you think to yourself, okay, what's wrong with that? That sounds pretty good. But when you read further into what they're proposing this mandatory sentence for people who have guns within 100 yards of churches, schools, yada, 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 courtrooms. Now, when you start throwing, this is my issue. Baltimore, I think 600 murders this year so far. Or maybe it was 600 last year total. I didn't do my the trials and tribulations of Baltimore, because we all know that it's a wreck of a place. But we do know that we have people who are paying attention, because they said the majority of the murders were committed by handgun. Everybody knows that the handgun is the most deadly weapon. Though for some reason, the idiot progressives who go after weapons and guns, they decide that, you know, the ones we want to go after are the high-powered rifles that have 30-round clips, because they're capable of unleashing such 600 murders. 580 of them or something like that were done with handguns. So you tell me, what legislation? But let's talk about this. Now, if it was possession of illegal firearms, here's what I like. I like the idea of having an unregistered, unvetted, illegal firearm bringing up a mandatory sentence. I'm not even that big of a fan of mandatory sentences, to be honest. I think that gives people too much power. I think that gives the government too much power, right? I don't like the idea of a mandatory no matter what, because there's a lot of nuance in life, right? I can't make mandatory anything. There's very few rules that can be made that are mandatory for anyone in America. So when sentencing becomes mandatory, I get nervous. You understand what I'm saying? If there's a situation inside a situation, and because of religion, I must pray this many times a day, because of my diet, because of my restrictions, because of my... If nothing can be made mandatory, if we can't even say we don't want to pay for transgender operations in the military, which is the nuance of the nuance of the nuance of the nuance of the nuance. If we can come out and say, you're taking a third of my money and my earnings every year, and some portion of that is going to go into a military budget that's going to pay for people to cut their penis off, right? I can't even say I want a mandatory ruling against that without people losing their minds. So the idea that someone can lock me away in a cage with a mandatory sentence that's as terrifying as it gets. Now, if we want to talk about stricter convictions, stricter laws on people who are carrying actual illegal weapons, regardless of location, because that's the problem. We all know that's the problem. Problem has nothing to do with the guy who walks into Dick's, buys a revolver, registers it, goes to the gun range, practices, concealed carry license, the whole thing. It had nothing to do with that. None of that is relevant. We're worried about the person. Hang on one second. Let me pay my debt to society. Good morning, sir. We're worried about the guy who got the gun in an unscrupulous way, and who's using it to rob, who's using it to sell drugs, who's using it to do all of the things that we know to be wrong. And most cases, guess what? That gun's usually the gun that winds up being part of that 600 murders. It's very rarely the guy who shows up doing the right thing at the gun range that decides to just all of a sudden haul off and shoot somebody. You can say, well, a lot of people like to say that access to guns in America is out of control, right? Out of control. That's why we have all these shootings. You know, too many people have guns. It's just a third of the country has guns. A third of this nation are registered gun owners. You know what I mean? Now, the statistics tell you that the statistics say that 89 million people are registered gun owners in this nation. So I easily make a leap of 10 million. It's probably much more, but I easily make a leap of 10 million people who are not registered gun owners. You know? I think about the Midwest, I think about Alaska, I think about the South, where guns have been handed down and handed down and handed down and never ever registered. And they don't want any parts of government registration. So easily 1/3 of the nation has guns. Now 1/3 of the nation probably has more than one gun. But 1/3 of the nation, in my estimation, has a weapon. Now if we had a problem with access to guns, I think we'd be seeing a lot more murders. I think we'd be seeing at least millions of murders if people really didn't know how to handle guns properly and how to, control themselves. We'd be seeing probably tens of millions of murders a year due to handguns. It's just not the case. So, we talk about mandatories. We talk about a mandatory 2-year sentence in Baltimore for having a gun near a school, 100 yards away from a school, 100 yards away from a church. And to me, I get it, but I think it should be part of a much bigger package. It shouldn't be a mandatory sentence. It should just be a heavier sentence. With the possibility, right? With the possibility of a heavier sentence dependent on situation. Because how can you, when you talk, this is why I hate mandatory minimums. Little Tommy's dad, right, has his gun in his car because he's coming from the range. I don't know if this actually counts. You might be able to get away with this if it's in the trunk. So let's say you roll in real quick, you're running behind schedule, you're rushing, you've got your concealed carry on, and you fly in to pick up little Timmy from your school. Somebody hits you. They come out livid. Altercation ensues. You try to defend yourself, not with the weapon. Cop shows up. Frisks you. You have a handgun. You're within 100 yards. This whole situation goes bad for you. Now you have a mandatory 2-year sentence. You leave Timmy behind. He goes to school, turns into a monster. Well, what have you. As opposed to a kid or a teenager or even an adult who shows up on the premise looking to do harm. Shows up on the premises looking to do harm. It's two totally different stories. It's two totally different books. It's two totally different forms of media altogether. And you want to slap a mandatory minimum on it. I'm sorry. It's a misuse of the law and it's an attack on the Second Amendment, in my opinion. I don't like it. If you want to make change with handguns, you have to make the hard decisions. You have to go back to stop and frisk. Everybody hates it. It's profiling. You got to do something along the lines of stop and frisk. And you don't got to do it often. You just have to do it enough. And you tell people, if we find you with a gun that isn't registered and you can't prove the fact that it's yours, that you bought it, that you own it, then you go to jail for a year. You go to jail for 2 years. You go to jail for 5 years. If you're in possession of a gun that doesn't belong to you, I can tell you this will help. This will eliminate many issues. But people don't want to do the hard things. So I want to get off this subject. All right? I wanted to pull you in. That was my tractor beam in. Now I want to talk about something a little deeper, which is hard limits. Hard limits, and how often are you getting to the edge of the universe? What do I mean by the edge of the universe? Are you a person who works out? Are you a person who runs, bikes? Are you a person who puts yourself through tremendous stress physically, maybe even mentally? I was running yesterday, and I was sprinting up this hillside that I sprint up, and it's not like a grass hill. There's rocks, there's fallen timber. It's ugly. It's an ugly situation. I do about 5 to 10 of those, and then I run the remainder of the park, which is all in the woods. Running in the woods is the best. There's no getting around it. There is no stretch of pavement that's better than running in the woods. The uneven terrain, the massive influx of oxygen being spilled out of the leaves all around you. There's nothing better than it. Plus the visual stimulation. The very being in the woods is better for you. You can just feel it, when you're in there. But when you do those hill sprints and when you do those crazy, cardiovascular exercises, you feel a very real wall approaching, right? You feel like the little painlings. They're these little, I always envision these little things called painlings, and they're like little demons that grab at your legs and weigh down your legs and push on your diaphragm and don't allow enough air to get in. And the painlings want you to stop. They want everything about you to stop, because they know once you hit the wall, once you hit the hard limit, that's where you really start getting better. So whenever I'm running or whenever I'm lifting, or whenever I'm doing something that's taking me to that limit, sometimes it can even be in the sauna after a hard workout, you know, you start to feel that madness where people are like, oh, you gotta stop. You gotta stop. The painlings start to seep in. They start to hold onto your legs and they start to wear you down, tell you you're gonna throw up. I always think of them. And that's how I manage my hard limit. And I'm interested to see how you guys manage your hard limits. You know, how do you deal with those hard limits of physical fitness, of mental stress? When you can almost, when you get to a certain point, you can almost physically feel the proximity of the wall that is your limit. And there's something about dancing in the space between very hard exercise, right? Serious stress level exercise, between that and the very end, the very limit of what you're capable of. It brings me back to the greatest personal quote of all time, which is, what one can do, one must do. I think you can model your whole life around that. You can model every decision you make around that. It is the greatest personal quote of the ages. What one can do, one must do. What you're capable of doing, you must do. There is no question about it. Right? If you're capable of pushing beyond that limit, you must do it. If you're capable of taking that job and those responsibilities on, you must do it. If you're capable of being something that people don't even recognize as a human, and I mean in integrity, and I mean in physical ability, and I mean in mental capacity, then one must do it. What one can do, one must do. And that's another thing that I think of when I'm pushing through those hard limits. I think to myself, what one can do, one must do. And what one must do right now is get up that hill again, one more time. You get to the top, you can't breathe, the legs are milk. And that's just what it is. Hard limits. I want to talk more about this when we come back, okay? Hard limits on the jwrights.com. Are you launching a survival blog? Do you have a preparedness product or service that you want to get to market? Use jwrights.com and we'll create unique content for you written by yours truly. This is my freelance website. You've come to know me. Trust me. Visit jwrights.com for your survival and preparedness freelance writing needs. I do infographics, white papers, ebooks. Visit jwrights.com. So we're back on the subject of hard limits. And the reason I bring it up is not just because I think fitness is incredibly important. I think mental stress is incredibly important also. It doesn't always have to be, based around things going terribly for you in life, but doing things like playing chess, doing things like jiu-jitsu that really tax the mind and make you think, how can I fix, how can I do, puzzles, those types of things. Your mind and your body need to be taken to that limit. We are seeing what happens when people aren't going to that limit on a regular basis. You look for a way to get your savagery out, right? We're savages. The greatest game ever played was the European settler calling the Native American a savage, right? That was the greatest game ever played. It was the greatest move of all time. The realization that these people are doing things that we would do anyway. We were all savages. We were all savages and we are all savages. Think about it. Think about your core, the core things that you want, need, power, money, sex, right? Power, money, sex for everybody. It's almost universal, the savagery. Now you can transcend it, but you got to burn it out. And it's only through rigorous exercise and mental strain that you can do that. This is just what I believe. I can tell you from experience, I perform better as a human being, as a 21st century human being, when I have worked out, when I have done something that has really taxed me, and when I have done something that's been fulfilling and hard with my mind. That allows me to wear out the savagery, and from there I can move on. So when I talk about reaching hard limits, it's not about, I want to get strong and big and cut. It's not that. I mean, that's a benefit, sure. It's good. It's good to look good. It's good to feel good. It's good to be strong. But it's about being human. It's about making clear decisions. You see people all the time on the news, right? You see these big riots of people. They're not thinking clearly. They're all boxed up. They live in this Nerf world. They live in this cushy world where everything's soft and easy, you know. I get this taken care of by this person, and I don't have to work through college. You know what I mean? When you meet zero resistance, you have to generate resistance. You still have to do it. So we come up with these crazy ideas. We get angry at groups of people because of what they believe or who they voted for or who they didn't vote for or what groups they're uncomfortable around or, you know, what groups they're standing up for. Having this savagery go unsatiated in our body is what makes people crazy. It's what makes people crazy. So you've got to get it. You've got to get it, and 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 you've got to come to the conclusion that every day you've got to get it, some way or another. In some way or another, every day you've got to get the stress, you've got to get the mental and the physical, and you've got to take your body to that point. You've got to take your body to that point where you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. You've got to get to that point where you're running and you say, I have to stop. I can't go anymore. I cannot go anymore. And then you have to go. And then you have to go more. And you have to see that limit. It's like the 5th round on the heavy bag. Right? I've got 5 minutes left. Come on. I've done 20 minutes. I've got 5 minutes left. And you throw a hard combination and all of a sudden everything comes out of you. And you're like, God, I got 3 minutes. And all of a sudden 20 minutes pales in comparison to the last 2 minutes. Because you don't even know how you're going to make it, how you're going to put any effort out. And that's dancing with that hard limit. That's so important. That's such an important part. And I bring it up on a prepper show, on a preparedness show, on a podcast about survival and other things. Because I think it's so important. It's so important to what we do. We're in the business of making critical decisions, right? Critical decisions about a number of things. Fitness is just no joke. You know, and going to those hard limits is no joke. It's crucial. So I'm telling you, you have to do it. If physically you can't, then mentally you must. What one can do, one must do. What one can do, one must do. So I'm ready for the big panel. We're going to do the big panel tonight. It should be a good one. Prepper panel, survivalist panel. If it goes well and we have a good show, it's going to be a 90-minute episode. We're going to do it again, I'm sure. And maybe I'll convince them to do it once a month, and we can have something really special. We can take questions from you, the audience, and discuss them in this monthly prepper panel with some of the best hosts in preparedness and survival on the internet today. What could be better? You know, what could be better? And what do I say from here? What do you guys want to talk about? What do you want to hear about? Every time I turn the microphone on and do a podcast, it's a question that runs through my head. What do they want to hear about? It's a culmination of what do they want to hear about and what do I want to talk about above all. There's so much to talk about. You know, I could get relatively personal. I could get political. I could get funny. I could get angry. You know, there's just so many ways you can go. There's so many ways you can go on a podcast. That's what makes it great. There are no limits. There are no limits if you want to really get to know yourself, right? Since we're on the subject of sort of personal or self-help and the like. You have to be able to.
It drives me nuts.
Drives her nuts. You have to be able to look into yourself. Look into yourself and say, man, what's going on with me before I start pointing fingers at others? So what do I want to talk? I'd like to talk. You know what I'd like to close the show on? I think I'd like to close the show on the possibility of dreams. I'd like to close the show on the possibility of dreams and that we live in the most incredible time ever. We live in the most incredible time ever. I set up an Amazon affiliate account. I don't know if I told you guys this yet. And just after a few good articles, I'm already earning money. And the idea that you can start to earn money from so many different avenues. There's apps you can put on your phone that will advertise to you directly to your phone, and you can earn money that way. What am I saying? Like never before, a lot of people come out and say the American dream is dead. American dream is dead. It's died. What was the American dream? The American dream is dead, yet I can make money selling t-shirts, I can sell hats, I can play Xbox and make money. Make YouTube videos, make podcasts, write books. I can get published. I can publish a book. Do you realize that publishing a book? See, you don't know this because you probably either didn't care about publishing a book or had no idea what publishing a book entailed. But since I was 19, 20 years old, I've been trying to get books published, right, by publishing houses. I didn't have an agent. I didn't want an agent. I needed to have an agent according to publishers. It's this weird cliquey thing. And then Amazon came around. And all of a sudden you can publish a book every week, every day, depending on how prolific you are. It's an amazing thing, right? If your dream is to be a writer, you can be a writer. If your dream is to be a movie maker, you can be a movie maker. You can be a filmmaker. You just have to get a couple pieces of equipment and start filming. You build an audience based on YouTube. You can build an audience. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. So if you have dreams, if you have aspirations and goals, I don't know that it can get any better right now than it is right now. Of course, the most important thing is building some sort of an audience. And how do you do that? I'm going to tell you how you do it. And there's no easy way. You've got to provide something to them. You've got to provide something to them, and you've got to be patient. You can't look at your job and say, I hate my job, I want to quit tomorrow. And that can't be your plan. You've got to look at your job, and if you say to yourself, God, this job is rough, I really don't like this job, I really need a better career, then you have to say, but I've got to stick it out for 3 years. And tonight when I go home, I'm going to create my first podcast. I'm going to write my first ebook. And I'm going to have that podcast produced by this date. I'm going to have that book finished by this date. And you've got to hold yourself accountable. And then you start building mailing lists and having contests and doing fun things and creating, developing an audience. And before you know it, you'll have traffic. And before you know it, you'll be able to sell advertising. You'll be able to do other things with that traffic. Divert affiliate links and make money. And here's the trick. Here's the real trick, if you want to know the real trick. The real trick is, it's not about the big money anymore. It's not about the big salary. That's not what matters. It's about the little money. It's about the side money. How much passive income can you generate? A little bit at a time that requires as little effort as possible, right? Of course, writing a book is a lot of work. But once you schedule some tweets, put the book up, start selling, that's when you can say, okay, I'm going to kick back and let this thing sell. It's the same with Amazon and other affiliate links, right? All right, I'm just going to let it work. Let it do its thing. I wrote the blog post. It's up. Now we go from here. YouTube videos, same thing. You think YouTube videos are valuable only because you get paid by YouTube after a certain... No. A YouTube video can be so valuable because you put affiliate links in the description or in the video itself. Now you're making money. And what happens if you pay down your debt, right? If you take my advice and pay down your debt at all costs, you got to pay it down at all costs. 401k, retirement, whatever. Screw it all. If you want to live a good life, right? If you want to live a good life, you pay down your debt. And now, suddenly, that money that you have to work for goes down substantially. And maybe you want to stack money. Maybe you want to be the guy who has all the money. You work harder and harder and you gather more money. Or maybe you're an enlightened person who understands, you know what, my time is more valuable than money. And I'll have enough money. I'm not going to have crazy money. I'll have enough money, but I'll have time. You know, I'll finish my work days at 2 o'clock. I'll finish my work day at 12 o'clock. I'll have off whenever I want to have off. Keep my clients happy, do what I need to do, whatever it is. You have to. What one can do, one must do. You know what you're capable of. What you're living now is the saddest thing in the world. You want me to be honest with you? The life that you're living now is the culmination of years and years of manipulation of the man animal. Right? That's what it is. It's years and years, hundreds of years of manipulation to convince you that your very best in this world is you behind a desk. And you are at your most valuable, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year is when you're sitting behind a desk, being productive for another company. Right? You wake up exhausted, eat a horrible breakfast, go to this job, sit behind the desk. They tell you you're a good guy or a good girl. They give you that paycheck every week to keep you coming back. They give you the bennies. And then you get off of work. And then you do, gym, ride the kids here and there, whatever it is. And panting and wheezing, you sit at the edge of your bed and you take off your shoes at 8 o'clock, right? You look across the bed at your husband or your wife. And in those couple hours before you pass out from exhaustion, that's it. That's your existence. If you were to write a book about your life, not the life that was bought out from under you, because you spent money on a college degree, so now you have to justify that money by working for a big salary. Not the morning when you're, wiping sleep away from eyes, getting kids ready. But if a book were written about your actual life outside of work, it would be about weekends and nighttime. You're left with a sliver. For $60,000 a year, well, you're left with a sliver of your own life. That's what you're left with. Hand the kids off, put the kids here, pick the kids up, put the kids to bed, scream at them, yell at them, get the kids up. What are they doing? I don't know what they're doing. I don't have time to worry about them. Talk to them on the way to this place, talk to them on the way to that place, pick up the fast food to feed them, rush home, baths, bed, read them a story, they go to sleep. Stare at the TV for an hour to try to get tired enough to fall asleep, even though you're concerned about everything that's happening in work the next day. And then you look back after 40, 50 years and you go, what'd I do? What'd I do with this life? What did I do with this life when there was so much potential? It's not like it was before. Before you could hang your hat on 20, 30 years at a good job, raising good kids. Because the options weren't there. I drove railroad stakes for 50 years, and I raised a beautiful son and daughter. No, it's dream time. It's time to chase dreams. I'm telling you. It's time to chase dreams. Do you got to learn? Yes. Do you got to work? Yes. Do you got to set it up in the beginning? Yes. Can you change your life and get out of this old school bullshit where you have to slave away for 40, 50 hours a week and a value is placed on your head and your whole existence is about increasing that value? Oh, what can I do to get that promotion? What can I do to get that next job? And you're sinking all your time into this company. And if the company goes under, guess what? Nobody's there. Nobody's there to help you. There are so many ways to make money. So many ways to make money on the internet now. Consultation, public speaking. I mean, there's a million things you can do. Freelance work is one of the best. And I just want to push you and tell you you can do it. You can do it and you should do it. And you should take your life back. And you should be able to look back in 30, 40 years and say, God, look at all the stuff I did. Look what I did with all my free time because I wasn't commuting. I wasn't taking a lunch break at work. I wasn't working an 8-hour day even though I only had 6 hours of work to do. That's the thing, right? Even if you've got a great job and you feel like I don't do much work at work anyway, they're still eating you for 8 hours. They still lock you up for 8 hours, 10 hours a day. That you could be at home. You could be with your kids. You could be with your wife. It's up to you, man. I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning so I can live the life I want to live. You know, that's what I do. I paid down my debt. I made a decision and choices, partially because I had to. And I took a terrible situation and turned it into a great one. And I know you can do it. I know you can do it, and I want you to do it. Remember, what one can do, one must do.